I found community that is in tune with me. Gail Garland singing and dancing in our Zoom, God. Some contemplation mixed with elation. I am a MOSh-nik and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning a little gray. A chance to meet you, a chance to greet you, a time to deepen what it means to belong. Let's have some fun tonight and spread some joy and light. I am a MOSh-nik and I'm here to stay. And I'm turning gray. Let's hear it, Huff. Although I'm not sure it was Huff on the Neil Young recording. But regardless. Okay, that's enough of that. Let me see, who's here? Haiti joined us. And Jay Smith, and none other than Eliana. Dan Glazer, where are your dinner partners? Oh, there's Deborah Lesk, and there's Judy Rakusin.
I'm Mary Rita.
Where's Mary Rita? Okay, she's coming. Great. Wait, but it's tradition.
Orange bag.
Isn't it tradition, Dan, for you and Mary Rita to be on separate computers?
No.
It is a tradition, and this is very difficult for me. This is a stretch.
Okay, that's fine.
I guess, yeah.
There we all are.
Hey, oh, wait a second. I'm going to take a picture, a screenshot. Everybody smile on 3. 1, 2, 3. Got it. Okay, if you're not smiling, I'll let you know. Hey, let's see what that looked like. Okay, I can actually show that to you. Oh, that's pretty nice. Excellent. Here, yeah, I'll show you. Where is that?
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. It's not open. Oh, here we go. Let me see. There it is. Okay, you can see that. No, that's not it. No, never mind. All righty, welcome everybody, and we got the fearsome foursome there in Silver Spring joining us this evening.
Picture.
I'm going to mute you guys because you're too loud. You're having too good a time. All righty, tonight we're going to take a look at a story, a pretty famous Talmudic story that, in talking to Miriam, she was familiar with it, and I suspect some of you might be familiar with it as well. And I'm going to be sharing my screen, and I would encourage you to spotlight me in order to see the words, but I'm going to be reading the story. And my plan is we're going to send you into breakthrough rooms. It looks like in Silver Spring, they have their own breakthrough room right there. And then we're 3, 6, 9, 12, 11 screens, not including me. So that makes 10 screens. So it'll be 3, 3, and 4 in the 3 other breakthrough rooms. And I'll be sending you there with some questions based upon the story. And then we'll come back and we're going to discuss this story. Alrighty. So here we go. Without further ado, let's open up the story. And if you want to highlight me so that it looks bigger, but I'm going to be reading it. So if things are pretty tiny, I don't know if I can teach this class with that wonderful dog chewing away right in front of me. It's
fine, Mark. It's actually showing up bigger than when you showed it to me before.
Oh, okay, good, terrific. You know, W.C. Fields said you should never go on stage with children or animals. Gosh, you get upstaged, right? Alrighty, so the sages further taught Tanu Rabbanan in praise of the reed. So we're going to begin. The story begins with a statement, really. Leolam yehei adam rach gekaneh va'al yehei kasheh ke'erez. A person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar. Okay, so we're talking about, the read by the by a body of water versus a a cedar tree, the bark of the hard trunk of a tree. So here comes the story. An incident occurred in which Rabbi Eliezer. Now, notice that some of the wording, and I've said this before, is in bold, and some of it is not. So the words that are appearing in bold are the words that actually appear in the Gemara, right? That appear in the text. The words that are not in bold are the words that are like filling in the sentences that allow us to understand what the heck the rabbis are sharing with us, because the Talmud is written in very terse language, and without this, it's much more difficult to understand what's going on. So an incident occurred in which Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, came from Migdal Gedor, from his rabbi's house, and he was riding on a donkey and strolling on the bank of a river. So I just want to interrupt here for a second. What was he doing? He was at his rabbi's house. So what's implied here? Anybody? You can unmute yourself if you have an answer.
He was studying.
Studying.
Or
Exactly. He was studying with his Rebbe, right? So he's riding on the donkey, strolling on the bank of the river after leaving the studying with his Rebbe. He was very happy, and his head was swollen with pride because he had studied much Torah. He happened upon an exceedingly ugly person. Hey, Yumi and Haiti. Yumi, you look very handsome with your glasses on. He happened upon an exceedingly ugly person who said to him, "Greetings to you, my rabbi." Shalom, Rabbi, right? But Rabbi Elazar did not return his greeting. Instead, Rabbi Elazar said to him, "Worthless person." Yeah, Roxanne, you're already rolling your eyes. How ugly is that man? Are all the people of your city as ugly as you? Okay, so raise your hand if you're familiar with the story. Roxanne and Miriam and Eliane. So even, I know it's hard to read, even if it's the second or third, how many times we've read it. He says to him, "Worthless person, how ugly is that man? Are all the people of your city as ugly as you?" The man said to him, "I do not know, but you should go and say to the craftsman who made me, how ugly is the vessel you made." Alrighty. Gail, you're shaking your head and go, whoa, right? So the craftsman, of course, here with a capital C is referring to, referring to God, right, Gail? When who made me, how ugly is the vessel you made? So Rabbi Elazar realizes what's going on. He had sinned, right? And insulted this man merely on account of his appearance. He descended from his donkey and prostrated himself before him and said to the man, "I have sinned before you." Right? Where does that sound familiar from? We just got through Yom Kippur, right? Shekatana lifanecha, right? We have sinned before you. So he says, "I have sinned before you. Forgive me." Salachti. And the man said, "I will not forgive you until you go to the craftsman who made me and said, how ugly is the vessel you made." Okay, everybody with me? Next page. He walked behind the man, trying to appease him, meaning Rabbi Elazar walking behind the not so attractive man in his eyes, until they reached Rabbi Elazar's city. The people of his city came out to greet him, saying, "Greetings to you, Rabbi, Rabbi, my master, my master. Adoni, Adoni." The man said to them, "Who are you calling my rabbi, my rabbi?" And they said to him, "To this man who is walking behind you." He said to them, "If this man is a rabbi, may there not be many like him among the Jewish people." Whoa. they asked him, "For what reason do you say this?" And he said to them, "He did such and such to me." Right? He reviews exactly what had gone on. And they said to him, meaning the townspeople, "Even so, forgive him, as he is a great Torah scholar." He said to them, meaning the man who had been insulted, to the townspeople, "For your sake, I forgive him, provided that he accepts upon himself not to become accustomed to behave like this." In other words, to do teshuvah, to change his ways. Immediately, Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, entered the study hall and taught, "A person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar." And that's going to be one of the questions to go into the breakthrough rooms with. What the heck does that mean? As one who is proud like a cedar is likely to sin. Well, there is one answer. And therefore, due to its gentle qualities, this is kind of like a post, like a postscript to the story. The reed merited that a quill is taken from it to write with it a Torah scroll, phylacteries, and mezuzot. Now, I just want to point out that this may or may not be true. It is not really true today because Sofrim tend to use like a quill, like from a turkey. But back in those days, it might have been used to write on a papyrus scroll, right? But not necessarily on a Torah scroll. So this is kind of a little odd that it says this, that the reed merited the zechut, right, to be used to write the Torah scroll. And there at the bottom, if you're interested later, is a nice a link to a website that talks about the writing of a Torah scroll and what is used, what was used, a little history of it, what implements were used. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. To first of all give you a coming attraction, which hopefully on December the 7th, the very first Wednesday in December, we're going to watch a movie together called 613. And the last, I believe it's the last mitzvah in all of Torah is that each of us should write for us a Torah scroll. And so we're going to watch a movie about the making of a Torah scroll. And we're going to have a sofer with us, Kevin Hale. Some of you know Kevin. He got smicha as well from Reb Zalman, blessed memory, a number of years ago. And he actually worked on the scroll that we read from, my Torah, when I first got it. I took it with me to Massachusetts because I knew that Kevin was going to be there teaching about the art of being a sofer. And so he used my Torah to teach the students about the art, which was a real nice honor for me. Alrighty, so before I tell you what the questions are to go into the breakthrough rooms with, well, I don't know. There's only 12 Zoom rooms. Should we have one conversation? Maybe, or should we break up into rooms? I'm not even sure whether we need to break.
Let's have one conversation.
Okay, Miriam, you win because you spoke up. Which is a different teaching based upon this week's Parshat Noach, that we kind of highlighted this afternoon in our meditation. Don't wait, right? Don't wait. So first of all, any clarification on the story itself? Do we need to go through the story again, or do you have a pretty good idea of the narrative, and also like maybe some themes that came up for you in the telling of the story? Just for clarification, does anyone would you like me to go through the story again? Anybody? Deborah, is that a yes? Okay, and Mary Rita, behind every great Gazumbai is a woman dressed in orange. Alrighty, so let me back up there. And how about somebody else Okay. How do I get to the first page here? There we go. Okay, would somebody else like to read the story besides me? Can anybody see it? I haven't put it up yet. Okay, I'll wait till I put it back up. Here we go.
Rabbi Mark, before you read it again,
Yeah.
are we supposed to believe? I mean, it just seems a little hard to believe a rabbi would walk up to a stranger and say such a thing. I don't know. It just, we're just supposed to believe that he would do that, walk up and say, "How are you so ugly? And are there more and more in here?" I'm just having trouble with the concept.
Judy Rakusin, are you so dumb to believe that Rabbi can't say stupid things to people to make them feel bad about themselves? That happens to be the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Well, like having had a rabbi make me cry on the morning of my bat mitzvah, I know that they can say stupid things. Yeah. It's just hard to imagine that this is in the Talmud. Okay.
Why are we any less stupid then than we are now, or any less human than we are now? I mean, how many of us walk around with Shiviti consciousness? Put the place Yud Hey Vav Hey before us always, Tamid, right? How many of us are living in that place? But no one, unless we're on the top of a mountain contemplating our navels. So we're living in the real world. We have our own tsuros, but we also look. It does say at the beginning he's very not just happy. He's full of himself. Right, he's full with pride because he just studied with his teacher, right? So his head is swollen, right? It says it right in the text, and he doesn't go up to the man. Remember that he was riding on a donkey and strolling, and then the man greets him, right? He says, "Greetings to you, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi," right? But the rabbi at first he doesn't return the greeting. But he must have then noticed him, or maybe he was struck. But I mean, who knows what this person looked like? It says ugly. We don't know what that means, ugly in comparison to, but certainly the rabbi is guilty of a lot here. Insensitivity being, not the least of it. So, Judy, I think that it's a beautiful thing to think that your rabbi or any rabbi. He's not capable of this kind of crap. What
is the Hebrew word for ugly that they use in this thing?
I knew you were going to say that. I don't have it in front of me. I don't think I do. Let me see. No, I don't have that page open in front of me, but I apologize for that. I really should have the.
I wonder whether it's a variance of a word for deformed or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. If you want to, I'll get back to you on that, Dan. I apologize for that. If anybody wants to look it up, this is, I can give you the citation, which is, it's from, I didn't find it there. Ta'anit 20AB. I found it someplace else.
Well, okay, I don't mean to take up everybody's time. I was just curious.
Okay, well, you're guilty, Dan.
Okay, I understand.
All right. So, Judy, that answered the question, I hope, and I promise not to do that ever again. Any other questions or comments or clarification before we read it again? And here, let me put it up for somebody to see if you can see it. And if you can see it, you can read it. And if you can read it,
we don't dare ask anything else.
Yeah, Dan Glazer, especially you.
Yeah.
Okay. Dan, would you like to read it?
No.
Yes.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
You get extra credit.
Yeah. And I'll start with an incident, if that's okay. An incident occurred in which,
Because you don't want to read the Hebrew? I'll read the Hebrew.
Okay, I mean, Tanu Rabbanan Leolam Yehe Adam Rach Ke Kana Ve'al Yehe Kasher Ke Erev.
Right. So Rach is soft.
Right.
and kasha, like, to be hard. Like,
Yeah.
it could be a hard question, but
A
in the,
person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar.
right.
An incident occurred in which Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, came from Migdal Gedor, from his rabbi's house, and he was riding on a donkey and strolling on the bank of the river.
Okay, stop right there, Dan. If anybody has any comments, thoughts, questions, as we go on, as Dan is reading, just stop the proceedings. Unmute yourself and said, "Wait," okay, and just interrupt. We can go through this with a fine-tooth comb the second time around. Go ahead, Dan.
And he was very happy, and his head was swollen with pride because he had studied much Torah. He happened upon an exceedingly ugly person who said to him, "Greetings to you, my rabbi." But Rabbi Elazar did not return his greeting. Instead, Rabbi Elazar said to him, worthless person, how ugly is that man? Are all the people in your city as ugly as you? The man said to him, I don't know. You should go and say to the craftsman who made me, how ugly is the vessel you made? When Rabbi Elazar realized that he had sinned and insulted this man merely on account of his appearance, he descended from his donkey and prostrated himself before him, and he said to the man, I have sinned against you, forgive me. The man said to him, I will not forgive you until you go to the craftsman who made me and say, how ugly is the vessel you made? He walked behind the man, trying to appease him until they reached Rabbi Elazar's city. The people of his city came out to greet him, saying to him, greetings to you, my rabbi, Adoni, my master, my master. The man said to them, who are you calling my rabbi, my rabbi? They said to him, to this man who is walking behind you. He said, oh yeah, who are you saying this to? To this man who is walking behind you. He said to them, if this man is a rabbi, may there not be many like him among the Jewish people. They asked him, for what reason do you say this? He said to them, he did such and such to me. They said to him, even so, forgive him, as he is a great Torah scholar. He said to them, for your sakes, I forgive him, provided that he accepts upon himself not to become accustomed to behave like this. Immediately, Rabbi Elazar, son of Shimon, entered the study hall and taught, a person should always be soft like a reed, and he should not be stiff like a cedar. As one who is proud like a cedar is likely to sin. And with it, a Torah, and therefore, due to its gentle qualities, the reed merited that a quill is taken from it to write with it the Torah scroll, phylacteries, and mezuzot. So he's equating stiff and proud.
Yes. Excuse me for a second. I'm looking for translation, which I just can't find quickly.
Isn't this the original German?
I found the word mechoar biyoter. Bechoar. I'm not sure what that word choar means. No different. Great. I'm looking in Safaria, and it says no definitions found. But that's not the whole word. It's more than the shorish. Okay, so I can't find it. Okie doke. Let's get back here. Full screen. So here's some questions. What are some reactions to this story? And is there anything bothering you? There's the famous line, what's bothering Rashi? And Rashi answers questions because, he's looking in the white spaces between the black letters, and he's trying to figure out, or actually he's looking at the black letters and it's not quite clear what things mean, right? And so something's bothering Rashi. What's bothering you? And what are some reactions to the story? What is the story about? Why is it even told? What are we learning here? Roxanne, start us off. Thanks.
So, what are we learning here? There are a lot of things, but the first thing that comes to mind is that um, our study of Torah, anything to help us be better human beings, does not always translate into action, and that's a real problem because we can become filled with Torah information, self-help information, whatever it is, and it make no translation into our lives.
Yeah, beautiful. I know someone who put his trust in a Torah scholar and who was involved in some shady business practices. This goes along with, Judy, your comment about, well, how could a rabbi, rabbis don't do those kinds of things. Well, yes, Torah scholars do those kinds of things too, right, Roxanne, as you're pointing out. And this person who I know ended up in prison because he put all his trust in a man that couldn't possibly have been misguiding him, right? There's no way. And yet again, we're human, and those baser instincts of the Yetzer Hara, they at times take over. So here's, I think that's a wonderful place to start. That all of our Torah learning should be for the sake of, being a mensch, right, and treating each other, b'tselem Elohim, and which is actually a hint at something else we should be looking at in the story. Haf.
I wanted to say two things. One is I can't help but be reminded of Rod Serling and the Twilight Zone. And there was an episode of the Twilight Zone in which there's a woman who's supposed to be so ugly, they take her to the hospital. You see all the people milling about, oh my God, she's so ugly, and of course, in the end of the show, what the punchline is, when you finally see everybody, she's this, by traditional standards, beautiful woman, and they are all these deformed people who are saying about that. So that story has stuck with me for a long time, and this story reminds me. Now, let me also state my other point. And I find myself often in these situations looking for a middle ground. And here's what I find. When obviously the moral story, too much pride and you're likely to sin. Well, you know what? Not enough pride and you're likely to sin too. So to me, having pride, if used in a correct way, is a good thing to have. Having pride used in a bad way is a bad thing to have. So I don't want to throw pride out with the bathwater. I want pride to be seen as other emotional things, as having a good place in life if applied correctly.
Thanks, Haf. I'm gonna the note I wrote to myself: pride, as long as that pride is in balance, right? It's a healthy kind of pride, and that could be an entire discussion in and of itself. Miriam.
Well, I raised my hand because I was going to talk about the thing about forgiveness, but Haf's comment reminds me that how in, oh God, I forgot the name of it, that humility is, in the Jewish teachings, humility is about knowing your proper place. So it's like having enough pride, having enough pride, not making yourself smaller than you are. And seemed like the way that you were talking about pride, Haf was similar to that.
What's that expression? Your play, no more, no less. Does anybody know that expression about taking up the exact amount of room
Of
that
space. Yeah.
No more than your place, no,
To
something
listen.
your space.
Yeah, something like that. If anybody wants to look it up, that's great. Miriam,
Yeah.
you had something else.
Yeah, I just noticing on the question of forgiveness that that the man wouldn't forgive Rabbi Elazar until he went to talk to the craftsman who made him, and and essentially was admitting his sin is essentially, I think, what he's asking of Rabbi Elazar. But then when the townspeople say, forgive him, he's a great Torah scholar, and he says, for your sake, I will forgive him. And it reminds me of some of the teachings in Judaism, which sometimes I have trouble with around forgiveness, that there's, and forgive, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like that there's a strain of thought that says it's not for me to forgive you, it's for God. Only God can forgive certain things. And so it sort of reminded me of that. So I just thought that was curious for me, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And we're actually going to take a look at a section of the Rambam, Maimonides' Mishnah Torah on Teshuvah that deals exactly with that, Miriam. There's also something here at play. I see Eliana be there in a second, which is he never does. The story never does have the man ask his creator, right? We don't see that in the story. And that seems to be, there are certain sins where that can only ask for forgiveness from God, like you say, and there's other sins we have to ask for forgiveness from each other. Well, this seems to be like one of those cases where we have to ask for forgiveness from each other, right? From a person to person. But you're going to see in a bit, there's also a teaching about how one deals with a Torah scholar. Now, what's going on here, it seems to me in private, the man is really giving the Rabbi Elazar tochacha. He's rebuking him. And his rebuke is somewhat softened in the face of the crowd. But he doesn't go all the way and stopping himself from rebuking Rabbi Elazar in public, which is a whole other level of shaming. And we can talk about that in the public sphere, in our times too. But that too is like a no-no. So there's a lot of things going on here that it's not it's not black and white who the good guy and bad guy are, but just the way the behavior is not totally it's on its face value on how we should and when we should be talking to each other in these ways. And we're going to get to that teaching in a bit too. Eliana.
As some of you know, my husband is Catholic. And on Sunday, we have a custom of sitting down with each other and talking about the gospel that he has just heard and the Torah that I have heard the day before. Well, this past Sunday, it was interesting that the gospel that he heard was the story about the Pharisee and the tax collector, where both of them went into the shul, and the Pharisee, who you have to remember, Jesus was in the camp of the Pharisees. So he was talking about one of his own. And the Pharisee goes into the temple or the synagogue and thanks God that he is not like that tax collector who's way in the back of the synagogue, beating his chest and asking for forgiveness. He is a righteous man. And then Jesus, the speaker, the teller of the story, says, whose prayer do you think God heard? And of course, we're led to believe then that it was the prayer of the tax collector. I think that this has a parallel, and a lot of the stories that are in the gospel have parallels with good reason. Jesus was a Maggid too. So that said, I'm reminded of, it's a jump to a different issue. I'm reminded of the high expectations that are put on rabbis. And if they should fall from grace, the fall from grace is very, very hard. There was a rabbi very near to where you live, in Chevy Chase, a number of years ago, who was highlighted on Dateline, I think it was, when he went into the home of a young person for the purposes of having sex. And oh my gosh, that spread throughout the community like wildfire. And it wasn't that there weren't other people who were also highlighted in this particular segment, but he was a rabbi. He should have known better. He should have not have done that. People held him to a higher expectation. And I think that, there's justification in that, but there's also a different level of judgment that comes attached to our religious and spiritual leaders. And I think that was shown out in this story, that this great rabbi should have known better. And the man was holding his feet to the fire. Marty.
Yeah, Shamati. I was going to allude to the story of the Dateline, but I'm not going there. Anybody else? Are rabbis held to higher standards than anybody else? Is a good question. Rabbis, let's count among them pastors and priests, but let's also count among anybody in the positions of power and influence, right? A boss, for instance, who holds sway over the staff, underlings, right? Who for various reasons wants to please the boss and wants to be seen in a good light. So it's not only for people in for clergy, but I certainly get it, and I try to be very, very careful in my behavior with with MOSh-niks and with anybody where I'm in public, for sure. Or even not, and what could get back, Rabbi Mark said this, that, and the other thing, especially in these days, in the age of social media. That's an interesting conversation, and I think a good one for clergy to have among themselves, because we can get, SCREWED, for being seen, for hinting at any taste of let's call it sin, but let's call it misbehavior, right? And it's a dangerous thing for us, for sure. Anybody else? Then let me hi Mel, welcome. You missed the story that we're basing this conversation on, but I think that you can just be a witness and listen in. You get something out of it. What about the whole issue of that we were talking? What was it, last Shabbat, of being made kidmutenu, right? For B'Tsalmenu v'kidmutenu, to be made in the image and likeness of God. I mean, talk about something that a rabbi in this case, but isn't it true of all of us? And it's a great Twilight Zone reference, Huff. Like everything is in, contrast to the norms of the culture in which we're living in as to what is thought of as being beautiful or ugly. And that's a slippery slope. So yeah, I think the story points to a lot more than just these two characters in the story, but rather how how being judgmental, and you know, we all do that, right? Fat, skinny, tall, short, woman, man, they, them, you know, we all do it all of the time. And that's just something that we all have to be very careful about, which is judging the book by its cover, right? So image and likeness of God. Lashon hara. Is there any Lashon hara going on in the story?
Well, when the guy tells the community what he did, that's lashon hara, and it's rebuking in public and all that. I mean, he did try to straighten the rabbi out in private. The question was there any reason for him to have to tell the community what the guy did?
Yeah.
I mean, what probably got him started was when they said, "Oh, this is our great rabbi, master, great, master, great," and he said, "Nah, not really. Did you hear what he did?" So, but you know, it's lashon hara, but they were also, the community was also involved in pride, if you will, because they were holding up their rabbi as an icon, as a do no wrong type of person. And so they were being prideful also.
Yeah.
And so he might have been able to say it differently, like, I'm not saying anything, but don't put your trust in this guy. But so he violated, but I'm not. But the community, in a sense, earned something because they were being prideful.
Yeah, the question of yeah, thanks, Dan. That's really important. The question of lashon hara, whether it is lashon hara, right, to tell the truth. Now he goes one step. Would it have been enough, like you say, Dan? Why does he have to continue? You know, he won't accept the rabbi asking for forgiveness right away. Right? There's something going on here about the public-private sphere, which a lot of course, Jewish halacha, Jewish law, brings to the fore, things that it's okay to do in the private sphere that's not in the public sphere, simply as carrying things, for instance, on Shabbat or in festivals. But whether it's Lashon Hara or not, and what kind of Lashon Hara. So Renee and I were once at Lincoln Square Synagogue in New York City. Some of you might be familiar with it. And the rabbi was giving a series of drashot. So we were there for one Shabbat morning, and the series of drashot was on Lashon Hara. So Lashon Hara is, you know, speaking evil. It's the evil tongue, right? It's like speaking badly about somebody. You know, it's many different kinds of lashon hara, and complete books have been written about it. But this is what the rabbi said: even if something is true, you shouldn't talk about it. So in other words, do you know that what the rabbi did? So it was true. That happened. We know that from the story. But it is lashon hara then to bring it into the public sphere and then talk about it, right? Do you know what so and so did? Basically, what the rabbi was saying, the rabbi from Lincoln Square, is that you shouldn't talk about anyone ever. Of course, Renee's reaction to that was, then what would we talk about if we didn't talk about other people, right? So there's got to be some kind of balance there between the extremes, but we still have to be very careful, even if it's true, because we don't want to spread even truths that show each other in a bad light, right? What's to be gained from that? Well, I know what's to be gained from the person who says it. Maybe they're getting back at the person, maybe they have some kind of axe to grind. There's a lot of different directions we can go with this. But Dan, very definitely Lashon Hara, Haf, and then back to Dan's coterie.
Here's what should have happened
Ooh,
to make everybody whole, in my mind. So instead of tattling on the rabbi to the people, I would hope that the rabbi had feeling badly enough, as he said he did, that the man would have had a way to either ask or indicate with a hairy eyeball or whatever, that the rabbi should be admitting openly himself to the people what he had done, therefore taking the other man off the hook. That to me is a better way of letting the truth come out without it having to be you blabbing about the truth, but you finding a way to coordinate a conversation that lets it happen.
Great, thank you. And I'm especially thankful in let's come up with a different ending to this story, right? Let's come up with an ending that satisfies you. And what else could have happened? So I'd love to play with stories in that way. So Dan's room, I think there was Jude. Devorah, do you want to say something? And then Eliana, and then I want to get to the citations that I brought with me to shed some other light on this conversation.
So on the topic of Lashon Hara, I have this burning question, and I finally have an opportunity to ask it. And that is, what happens, if we're not supposed to talk about things in that category, how does one process, is that right? Process them? How does one kind of manage to cope with them when really, I need to talk about things. I need to be able to talk, and I try to pick the right person to talk about it so it's not harming the person. But what does the Torah or what does our teaching tell us to do? Because you can't hold everything in all the time. And so, is it okay to talk about it with a rabbi? Is it okay to talk about it with a therapist? Or is that also Lashon Hara?
Anybody want to answer that question? I think the word confidentiality comes into play here.
Yeah.
Eliana. You don't have to answer the question. I'm not avoiding the question, Deborah. Miriam, would you want to take a shot at?
Well, I guess what popped in my head was to process something is to talk about your own feelings and not so much about what the other person did or didn't do. It's, and I think if the focus is on that plus the confidentiality. So I don't know, but that was sort of my gut response to your to the way that you posed that, Deborah.
Deborah, does that help?
Go ahead.
In doing
Does that make sense? What
so, but in
Ouch.
talking about, I come and I talk to you about how I feel, I have to tell you what had happened in order to be able to talk about it. So then I'm talking about the other person because they have done something.
So are you taking the rabbi from Lincoln Square to the extreme, meaning that we should never say anything about anybody else? Is it those guidelines that you're wondering about?
Yeah, that's always what's on my mind when this topic comes up.
Yeah, he's basically saying we have to be very, very careful with what we say about anyone, because we never know on what is the circle of confidentiality. You know, things get out very, very easily. There are people that you could talk to, Devorah, that you know you can't talk to other people because those people are known to just about to be gossipers. So, you know, we be careful with who we share this information with, but sometimes information is so important to share because of the damage that of the person who is who has you know, done whatever, you know, that damage could poison an entire community, and so things need to be dealt with. It's not like we can't talk about these things, but we need to be very careful about who we talk about them with, and then in what container. Eliana, and then I really want to get to these other teachings, but this is fantastic.
It's not easy. You really do run it.
In response to Deb, I think that intentionality is an essential element of what we're talking about. If our intention is to heal ourselves, Ana Elna Rafanala, where healing, you know, the understanding of how we heal ourselves has evolved since the time of the sages, where we have many medicines. We also have discovered the tremendous benefit of talk therapy. And if the intention is to heal ourselves and not to harm the other, but to state it as a story so that the listener can help us to heal, I think that that's on a different level than Lashon Hara, which in my mind is idle gossip, and with no intention of healing myself, and with some intention of hurting the other person. The second thing that it's just a short little question. Are these stories that we find in the Talmud, are these stories as a teaching, or are they factual things that have actually happened, that, you know, we should take literally because it actually happened? It seems to me like this is a teaching.
You know, the answer to your question is yes.
Oh, thank you.
We don't know if this actually happened, and it might have been invented as a teaching story. But does it really matter?
Well, no, because the lesson is there.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me share with you, thank you, Eliana, a couple of teachings. This first one is from the Mishnah Torah. This is from the Rambam on Hilchas Teshuvah, the laws of Teshuvah. Teshuvah and Yom Kippur only atone for transgressions between a person and God, such as one who eats a forbidden food, okay, talking about kashrut here, or has a forbidden sexual relationship, etc. But transgressions between man and his fellow, such as hurting his fellow or cursing his fellow or stealing from him, those are never forgiven until he gives his fellow what he owes him and his fellow is appeased. So these are different kinds of situations. One is first Bein Adam v'Makom, between a person and you know, one of the names for God, Makom, the place, which is derived from you know, Yaakov, Yesh Hashem b'Makom hazeh v'ani lo yadati. God was in this place and I did not know. Okay, and another category is Bein Adam v'Chavero, between a person and his, you know, fellow. So even if he returned the money he owed his fellow, he must appease him and ask him to forgive him. Even if he only perturbed his fellow verbally, he must make amends and meet with him until he forgives him. If his fellow does not wish to forgive him, he should bring a line of 3 people who are friends with him, and they will approach him and ask forgiveness from him. If he does not give in to them, he must bring people up second and third time. If he does not give in, they should leave him alone, and that person who did not forgive, he is the sinner. So this is a pretty well-known idea that, we go 3 times, and if the person won't forgive us, basically it's that person, it's on them. And this goes, I think, too, with what you were just talking about, Eliana, that the part of the healing process, we ask for forgiveness, not maybe more so for ourselves, to relieve ourselves of the burden of carrying whatever guilt that we were carrying on from having offended another human being. But catch this last thing. But if it was his teacher, he must come and go even 1,000 times until he forgives him. So there's, and I'm not even sure how I feel about this, but clearly the Torah scholar, right, the teacher is being placed on a different pedestal, on a different category than another person. And I'm curious why you think this last line, what this is about. Anybody have any kind of inkling, anything rising up in you? If it was his teacher, he must come and go even 1,000 times until he forgives him. Now we stumped the band. Okay, we can come back to that. Continuing.
Well, it seems to go against the grain. I mean, you would think that the teacher would know about all this and would forgive the guy. But this is saying that the teacher knows better. And is this saying that the teacher knows better and doesn't have to forgive him? Or I'm not sure which side this is on, but it looks bad.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go take a look after class at the Hebrew, because in the English, it's not necessarily clear to me on this reading who he is.
Right.
Right, Miriam?
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. I can't tell who's asking for forgiveness, whether it's the teacher or yeah.
Exactly. So we're not really sure. But there is, where there's the teacher involved, there does seem to be a different criteria of how this forgiveness works.
Maybe it's if back to that, if it is the teacher is the one who sinned or injured the other party.
Just like in our situation here, in our story.
Then it's the teacher really has to.
I think you're on the right path, Dan. That makes the most sense, right?
Right, because I mean, the being held to a higher standard.
Yeah.
He really does need to be forgiven by this guy and has to keep coming back and can't just say, well, I tried 3 times, it's on him now.
Yeah. Right. A higher standard that the person who knows all of these laws of forgiveness should be held to. Miriam?
Well, so then the other way is also that it could be that because the teacher should be revered, and so and needs to be respected more, and so asking, it takes more asking, somehow more respecting him or something like that, which I guess doesn't answer the question of, well, why does the teacher have to be asked that many times before he's willing to to forgive?
Right. Yeah, it's problematic either way. Yeah, go ahead, Huff, and then Roxanne. Oh, Roxanne, you're clapping. You're muted, Huff.
If I'm understanding it correctly, it's the opposite message, because in the first story, they want to let the person go and not worry about it because he's a great Torah scholar. In the second story, well, he should know better, so we have to hire him to a higher standard. It's I can't help but, I hate to bring politics into this for 10 seconds, but I can't help but think of people who will not hold Trump to a standard of any normalcy, but he can shoot people on Fifth Avenue. What is the standard because of his status in life? And when do you hold the person accountable, regardless of what their status is?
Yeah.
That's why I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, yeah. Roxanne and then Jay.
I think that the idea of the teacher has to come back 1,000 times um, is because the potential for the kind of contract people make with their teacher, unspoken or spoken, the potential for influencing many others is there rather than just one guy that, it doesn't really put himself in the position of being a teacher. And that's why, to me, in the original story, I am very touched by what the the man who was insulted requested for the teshuvah of the rabbi, because he doesn't benefit really. He doesn't even live in that town, so he doesn't really benefit from the fact that what he's saying is so that you will never do this again. And that to me is very big-hearted of him. It reminds me of the 5 love languages of apology, and one of which is that the person, this is the same guy who did, the 5 love languages. He did 5 love languages of apology, and this one is my favorite, where the person will never do it again. I can forgive if I believe the person, it will never happen again. I'm like, okay, so it won't happen again. And so right when I was listening to the story, right away my ears went ding. That's my favorite one. But I also think that it's important for the teacher to keep working at it until maybe they're worn down, their pride or whatever is worn down. They can't have 3 buddies come and go, oh, he's such a good guy. He was top of his class. I love having schnapps with him. Don't bum him out. Because he could get 3 buddies easily, to say, don't do this. So I think that those 2 things go together.
Yeah, yeah. And thanks for pointing out too what true teshuvah is only. It's not just the asking for forgiveness, it's the not doing it again when the same situation arises. So it's exactly what you're talking about. And it's interesting that the love languages of forgiveness, picks up on that as well. Many different teachings that are all talking about, basically driving home the same point, learn from your mistakes. And also, are you suggesting that the rabbi should be expected to go back? The rabbi spoke in hyperbole, just like 100 blessings a day was supposed to say. Well, yeah, I mean, if we daven 3 times a day, that's going to take care of most of them. But basically it's saying like, do it as much as possible, give gratitude, because if you're a person that gives gratitude, then you're going to you're going to live in that, and you're not going to take things for granted, but et cetera, et cetera. So I'm hearing too the possibility that maybe the rabbi is modeling to his community that this is really, really important, right? To keep going back, because maybe the first time, Shloimeh sees him going, and the second time it's Heschel, the third time it's Yaakov, the 5th time it's Yankel, and it's different people who see him trying to make amends, and he's modeling for the community behavior that he would like others to live by as well. So I'd never thought of that before. Thank you, Jay.
For me, that it was for his teacher. It's not just any teacher. It's not just a teacher. That there is a special contract between teacher and student, and a special responsibility in both directions. It's not the same parallel, but there is, and so when that is violated in either direction, perhaps, that's what requires the extra effort.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. It's from one story where we are harvesting so much Torah. Beautiful. Roxanne, did you have something else, or you just didn't take your name? That's okay. All right, let's do one more quote, one more teaching here, only because Abraham Joshua Heschel is like a hero. And this is Heschel is being quoted by Rabbi Arthur Green. If you don't know Art Green, you should. Why are we forbidden to make images of God? So here he's concentrating on B'Tselem Elohim, right? Clearly, the rabbi is not seeing this man, B'Tselem Elohim. He's not seeing the image of God in him. He's seeing something very superficial. It is not because God is beyond all images, so that no image could possibly depict God. If that were the case, images would merely be harmless. God has an image, and that is you. Right? Remember this past Shabbos? Image of God, image of God, image of God, right? You may not make the image of God because you are the image of God. The only medium in which you can make God's image is the medium of your entire life. And that is precisely what we are commanded to do. I think it's beautiful. Everything you do, everything you say, each moment and the way you use it are all part of the way you build God's image. So we are God's PR department, right? We make known God's name in this world. So that, and that's all over our prayer book, right? So that God's name shall be glorified and known. The entire Kaddish is about that. To take anything less than a full living human being, like a canvas or a piece of marble, and call it the image of God would be to diminish God, to lessen God's image. So surely, and I'll send you the story after we're done. I'll send it to everybody. Actually, let me take a picture of you all so I don't forget who is here. Bing. So B'Tselem Elohim, you know, also has a place here in this story. And for the rabbi not to know that, you know, not to be living at that, it just points out that we are human and we err, and to err is divine, but to make teshuvah, right, and to say I'm sorry is baked in even before there was Bereshit bara Elohim. You know, that was one of the 10 things that was created before we came into existence, which is teshuvah, you know, the ability and the need to make amends and to fix that which is broken. So we're coming in for a landing here. We just have a few minutes left. Any final thoughts, reflections that any of you would like to share? I would like to share that I am so honored that the foursome hanging out in Silver Spring decided to spend your night with the rest of us, as opposed to just laughing and eating and having a grand old time. So thank you, the Dan Glazer 4. That's the name of the band. You have to unmute yourself, Judy.
And this is our song. Let's give them something to talk about. I got a mystery to figure out. Let's give them something to talk about. How?
Mute.
No, it's a better place not to mute, but to